Welcome back to LIVENODING. In this episode, I'll be sharing with you the breakdown of how I created this kind of like a block of space chunks. The application of this is probably something similar to kind of like a Lego. I don't know, but it's a little bit like it's looking a little bit like city maybe. I don't know, but it could be something else. Some kind of container, or could be like a housing, but yeah, I don't know. But I created this using simply Spreadshirt nodes, and the shader that I'm using currently is using the JS placement with a bit of random color, but the actual nodes itself that's generating this is using Spreadshirt nodes. Okay, so this is not like a single objects becoming this, but it's actually generated on the fly. So I have 64 different objects here. I can turn it, for example, maybe 3 by 10. So this is like a different arrangement. Or I can just make it simple, 3 by 5. So we have 15. We can arrange this like, maybe let's see, yeah, arrange it like a grid anyway, and each one of them can be adjusted with different height and different width. The only things that's actually doing the job is actually the noise displacement, just in case you want to know right away. It's pretty easy to create, and the noise itself is using the cell noise. If I have used Perlin, the result's gonna be completely different, you know, just like a basic looking object. Let's switch back to cell noise. You might notice there's like highlight with the nodes inside Spreadshirt. It's kind of neat. It's a new feature of Spreadshirt. When it's doing calculations, if it's too long, it's gonna give highlight of the nodes. So let's switch back to 8 by 8 by 8. I can use the different setup here. Instead of plain, I can use vector p field. So this is 64. I can also make 64 points. Just plug this into the matrix. It's gonna generate like a grid to host our object here. You might notice also only some boxes becoming this kind of looking plates, because I'm using geometry nodes in here. So there's a bit of magic happening underneath. Besides this, I need to select one of them and select all, hit A and then Command L, copy modifier. So each one of them will be using the same geometry nodes. So this is once again geometry nodes and Spreadshirt working together. So let's take a look what's going on. I started with a rounded box. So this single node is doing all the job. These nodes basically create rounded box, and I can change the radius and everything will change. It's gonna propagate. I think I might have made the thing a little bit high resolution. Okay, now it's a bit more dense, I think. A little bit heavier, maybe too heavy. Yeah, I might need to restart this. I need to be careful if I made too much So I'm using Blender 3.0. So the way I started is basically something like this. Rounded box, mesh viewer, connect the two. So I have like a sphere. I can adjust the radius. So I think I started with something like this, and I can change the resolutions. And if you look at the in wireframe, we have different type of subdivisions that we can use. On top of this, we also have this control over the V. I think in the past I've done something similar. Now that we have like a noise displace, this will displace our object, and we can kind of change the type and use cell noise. So this is the basic idea. It's really that simple. And I don't need to explain anything anymore. This is the cell noise doing its magic. In fact, you can start with something like this and then use solidify, but I didn't do like too crazy with the cell noise. I mean, I start with maybe 1 2x2. I tried not to be too crazy with the cell noise, and I changed the scaling with the noise matrix here. So I make it smaller or larger, so we have a different look to our box. One of my setup must have created something that looks a little bit normal. So this is like the basic idea. Let's change the type. And I think I also use multiple cell noise. While changing the scaling and also reducing the strength. So we can have totally different look. So this is the space junk, the starting point of our space junk. It's looking pretty neat. Maybe I should just give you this space Lego space junk. I call this one like Lego space junk because we can actually do something neat with this. You see here this number 644. If we create a cube and with a scale of 644, we get more or less like the same dimensions. Maybe this one's a little bit smaller, but the ratio is the same. So we can basically turn this guy into something like this simply by using the noise. So if you're with that in mind, if you're doing like, if you add a cube, if you make a city or whatever, like a robot, this way, you know, like a building blocks, architects will love this kind of thing because you can work in some kind of space very easily. This is really easy. Anyone can do this, just arranging block. And with Sphere-Chalk, you can simply grab all of this block and turn it into something like this. The easiest that I could think of, if like, I don't know, select all of them and dice. Remesh is actually kind of doing the same thing, similar to rounded cube. So with this box, if I remesh it, I lost all of the diffusion. However, maybe I shouldn't join it, keep it the same, and then Command L link the modifier. So I have just these rounded boxes. I should be able to just replace this. So save new version of blend, always have multiple. Object data, get object data, can get all selections. This guy still have the, you see, these have locations and rotations, and it doesn't have scaling, but anyway, we can turn on pause modifier and just replace all of this. Yeah, but we need to apply the matrix like that. So I think does it work? Let me check. I think it's only bringing one. Okay, it's working, right? It's working. We just might need to subdivide this a little bit more. So we can create all this space junk. Let's hide the original space junk. Just move it into new collections. Yep. We might just make this a bit smaller in voxel size. So there we go. Kind of what I was thinking in mind. Use ambient occlusions. Yeah. We need proper shader just to make it looking a little bit nicer. But yeah, this is the using just cell noise. I started with rounded box. Okay, so you got the idea. So if I go back to the original, I'm gonna show you a couple. So originally this is how I use the capsule node. So rounded box and noise displace with the same cell noise. You can actually generate something like this. Here I'm using randomizations on the height of the rounded box. So this is the cell noise again doing its magic. So FDF kind of like a tower. So if I go back to version 6, now it's starting to have a different look. Why is it looking like this? It's because I have besides the Sverchok nodes, see, Sverchok nodes is really simple, just the rounded box, noise displace, another noise displace with different matrix. Okay, you just play around with that. This plane is just generating duplicates. Without the duplicates, it's just, you're just gonna get a single object. There's a random seed that I generated here that we can randomize just to get a different result. It's gonna take a few seconds. We also have this random seeds generator for the vector size for the rounded box. Okay, but the geometry nodes is also really simple. Edge split. Okay, so edge split, if we go back to Sverchok nodes, if we get rid of the seed, if we just generate like a single object, let me delete everything. Oops, actually it didn't like what I'm doing, so I'm just gonna re-update all the nodes. Okay, it's generating 64 objects. Okay, because we have this random number. Okay, delete this. So we end up with just single objects. Okay, this is like the default. I should have just shown you this. If I render this out, also we have already quite a nice colorations, because each one of them is made of different cell part. And this guy have geometry nodes doing its job, also doing its magic. It's cutting and dicing based on the angle. Okay, so this is pretty, you might have seen this in a different tutorial, but this is also like separating different plates in real time, and if different plates, it's also because I'm using the shader. Geometry, random per island, hue saturation value, and if you using some kind of trickery, if you use this kind of different color for each plates, or if you wanna separate them, this geometry nodes that has been smoothed and solidified. If we just apply all of them, Command A, doesn't like. I cannot hit apply, weird. Just duplicate this. We need to be in edit mode and F3, separate by loose part. So we have multiple objects, kind of looking like alien-like, but I think I call it just simply like a space chunks. Save this as the default. Yeah, capsule noise, space chunk. So we end up with something like this, and you can use JS placement on top of this, because you already have something looking pretty interesting in terms of topology, kind of like an alien block. If you dice these little parts into more like smaller dice, you can do that, but it's gonna be too small anyway. You have this kind of puzzle, you can rearrange it if you want to. You can use it to generate parts, kind of like a modular parts. Anyway, I don't want to get too crazy. So that's pretty much it. It's a space chunk generated using Spreadshock add-on, Spreadshock nodes. It simply look at any block or of object, and then just using noise display, cell noise, displays it in real time. It's very similar to Blender's own displacement if you want to. But yeah, but I think it's kind of nicer to be able to do it using nodes and generate it on the fly. Hopefully this video is useful for you. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.